Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Wedding Day Silence. Derek Thornfield adjusted his tie one final time as he stood at the altar of St. Matthew's Cathedral. At 34, he was a man who commanded respect. 6'2", with steel-gray eyes that had seen the ugliness of war during his military service and later the cutthroat world of private security consulting. His company, Apex Protection Services, had made him wealthy by keeping dangerous secrets for dangerous people. The organ began playing, and Chloe appeared at the end of the aisle. 28 years old, with auburn hair and emerald eyes, she looked ethereal in her flowing white gown. They had met 2 years ago at a charity gala, where she worked as an event coordinator. Her laugh had captivated him, her seeming innocence a balm to his hardened soul. But today something was wrong. Chloe walked down the aisle mechanically, her face pale and expressionless. When she reached him, Derek searched her eyes for the warmth he'd fallen in love with. Instead, he found something cold and distant. The ceremony proceeded with painful stiffness. Chloe's responses to the officiant were barely audible whispers. When it came time for their personal vows, she simply nodded when asked if she took Derek to be her husband. No smile, no tears of joy, nothing. Derek felt the eyes of 200 guests burning into them. His military buddies, her family from Portland, their mutual friends, all witnessing this bizarre pantomime. His mother, Margaret Thornfield, sat in the front row with worry etched across her weathered face. "What's wrong? Why won't you talk?" Derek whispered urgently during the ring exchange, but Chloe just stared ahead in silence, her hands trembling as she slipped the band onto his finger. The reception at the grand ballroom was a surreal nightmare. Chloe sat beside him at the head table like a beautiful mannequin, mechanically cutting their wedding cake, forcing smiles for photos, but never speaking. When guests approached to congratulate them, Derek found himself making excuses. "She's just overwhelmed. Wedding nerves. She's feeling a bit under the weather." Brett Morrison, Derek's former Army buddy and current business partner, leaned over during dinner. "Brother, what the hell is going on with your wife? She looks like she's at a funeral, not her wedding." Derek's jaw tightened. Brett was right. Something was seriously wrong, but he had no answers. Around 9 o'clock, Chloe excused herself to the restroom. As Derek watched her go, a young waitress with short blonde hair approached his table. She looked nervous, glancing around before slipping him a small folded piece of paper. "Sir, someone asked me to give this to you," she said quickly before hurrying away. Derek unfolded the note with growing dread. The handwriting was unfamiliar, but the words hit him like a sledgehammer. "Your wife has been lying to you for 8 months. She's been having an affair with your business partner, Brett Morrison. They planned this wedding as the perfect cover. She's pregnant with his child, not yours. She wanted to back out today, but Brett threatened to tell you everything and destroy her reputation if she didn't go through with it. She's trapped, and now so are you. Check her phone. Password is your anniversary date from when you first met." I couldn't stand watching this anymore. "A friend." Derek's vision blurred. His hands began to shake as the words sank in. The noise of the reception faded to a dull roar in his ears. He looked across the room at Brett, who was laughing loudly with some of Derek's army buddies, a beer in his hand, playing the role of the loyal best man. 8 months. They had been engaged for exactly 8 months. Everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. Chloe's recent distance, her mysterious doctor appointments she claimed were for wedding stress, Brett's increased interest in their business finances, the way they both seemed to avoid being in the same room together lately. It wasn't avoidance, it was guilty conscience. Derek stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. Several guests looked his way, but he was already moving toward the exit, the note crumpled in his fist. His mind, trained by years of military strategy and security planning, was already shifting into tactical mode. Derek Thornfield had built his reputation on never leaving an enemy standing. Tonight, he had discovered he'd been sharing his bed with 2 of them. Chapter 2. The Discovery. Derek drove through the empty streets of downtown Portland, his hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. He pulled into the parking garage of his high-rise apartment building, the one he'd planned to sell after the honeymoon, since he and Chloe were supposed to move into their new house in the suburbs. In his study, Derek opened his laptop and began doing what he did best, gathering intelligence. His military background and current profession had taught him that information was the deadliest weapon of all. First, he accessed the security footage from his office building. As the owner of Apex Protection Services, Derek had state-of-the-art surveillance systems. He scrolled through weeks of footage, his stomach churning as he watched Brett and Chloe's secret meetings in Derek's own conference room. There they were, embracing passionately, her hand on her still flat stomach, Brett's mouth against her neck. The timestamp showed their affair had started exactly 8 months ago, right after Derek had proposed to Chloe at their favorite restaurant. Derek's phone buzzed with texts from concerned wedding guests, but he ignored them all. He had work to do. Next, he hacked into Chloe's phone remotely, a skill he'd learned from his cybersecurity contacts. The password worked exactly as the note predicted. What he found made his blood run cold. Text after text between Chloe and Brett. Brett, just get through the ceremony. We'll figure out the rest later. Chloe, I can't do this to him. Derek loves me. Brett, you should have thought about that before you spread your legs for me. You're having him why, baby? If you don't marry him, I'll tell him everything and make sure everyone knows what a whore you are. Your precious reputation will be destroyed. Chloe, I hate you for this. Brett, you didn't hate me last night when you were screaming my name. Derek's hands clenched into fists. But it got worse. He found messages between Brett and someone named Tony Vega, a name Derek recognized from his criminal background checks. Tony was a loan shark who Brett apparently owed serious money to. Gambling debts, from the looks of it. Tony, you better have my money by the end of the month. Morrison, or you're going to be eating through a straw. Brett, don't worry. I'm about to become business partners with my buddy Derek. His company is worth millions. I'll have your money plus interest. Tony, how are you going to manage that? Brett, let's just say I've got some leverage over him. He's marrying my baby mama tomorrow, but he doesn't know it. Once I control half his business through his wife, you'll get paid. Derek leaned back in his chair, a cold smile spreading across his face. So that was the real game. Brett hadn't just stolen his woman. He'd planned to steal his life's work too. Chloe was just a pawn in Brett's scheme to take over Derek's company and pay off his debts. Derek pulled up Brett's file from his secure server. As his business partner, Derek had done extensive background checks on him. Brett Morrison, 32, from Seattle. Former Army Ranger, discharged for conduct issues Derek had never fully investigated. Divorced, with a string of failed relationships and mounting debt problems Derek hadn't known about. But Derek also had something Brett didn't know about, leverage that went far beyond business partnerships. 2 years ago, Derek had been hired by a government contractor to provide security for a classified operation in Afghanistan. Brett had been part of the team, and Derek had covered up a serious incident where Brett had violated the rules of engagement, resulting in civilian casualties. Derek had destroyed the evidence and official reports to protect Brett's career and their unit's reputation. Brett thought that secret died in the desert. He was wrong. Derek made a series of phone calls to his contacts, people in dark corners of the intelligence world who owed him favors. By morning, he would have everything he needed to destroy both Brett and Chloe completely. His phone rang. Chloe's name appeared on the screen. Derek. Her voice was small, scared. Where did you go? Everyone's asking. I know, Derek said quietly. Silence stretched between them. Derek, I can explain. Can you explain whose baby you're carrying? He heard her sharp intake of breath, then the sound of her crying. I'm coming home, she whispered. No, Derek said, his voice like ice. You're not. This isn't your home anymore. It never was. He hung up and removed the battery from his phone. Derek Thornfield was done being the victim. Tomorrow, the war would begin. Chapter 3, The Setup. Derek spent the night in his study, making preparations with the methodical precision of a military operation. By dawn, he had assembled a comprehensive dossier on both targets and formulated a strategy that would destroy them systematically. His first call was to his lawyer, Patricia Hawkins, who specialized in high-stakes corporate litigation. Derek, congratulations on the wedding. Patricia, I need an emergency annulment. Tonight's wedding was obtained through fraud. I have evidence my wife has been having an affair and is pregnant with another man's child. Patricia was quiet for a moment. That's certainly grounds for annulment in Oregon. I can have the papers filed by Monday. Good, but that's just the beginning. I need you to prepare a hostile takeover of my own company. I'm sorry, what? Derek explained the partnership structure of Apex Protection Services. While Derek owned 60%, Brett held 40% as a founding partner. However, Derek had discovered that Brett had been using his shares as collateral for his gambling debts without Derek's knowledge, a violation of their partnership agreement. If Brett has pledged his shares illegally, I can void his partnership and buy back his stake for pennies on the dollar, Patricia confirmed. But Derek, are you sure you want to? I want him financially ruined, Derek interrupted. Completely destroyed. Can you do it? Yes, but then do it. I'll transfer the evidence to your secure server within the hour. Derek's second call was to Marcus Webb, a former CIA operative who now ran a private investigation firm. Marcus had been Derek's commanding officer in Afghanistan and knew about Brett's covered-up incident. Derek, my boy, how was the wedding? Marcus, I need a favor. Remember that situation with Brett Morrison in Kandahar? The line went quiet. What about it? I need the real files. All of them. Derek, that's dangerous territory. If that comes to light, Brett Morrison is trying to destroy my life. He's been having an affair with my wife and planned to steal my company. The civilian casualties in Kandahar weren't collateral damage. They were murder. I covered for him, and now he's repaying that loyalty by betraying me. Marcus sighed. I'll have the files to you by tonight. But Derek, once this door opens, there's no closing it. Good. I want it wide open. Derek's third call was to someone who didn't officially exist. Gabriel Stone was a problem solver for people with serious money and serious problems. Derek had met him through his government security work, and Gabriel had a talent for making inconvenient situations disappear or making inconvenient people disappear. Mr. Thornfield, Gabriel's cultured voice came through an encrypted line. I heard congratulations are in order. Actually, I need your services. 2 targets. I want them broken, not dead. At least not yet. Financial, personal, physical, all of the above. I want them to lose everything that matters to them, slowly and painfully. And I want them to know it's coming from me. Interesting. Send me the details. My rate is, money isn't an object. I want creativity. I want them to suffer the way they made me suffer. Understood. I'll be in touch. By noon, Derek had received confirmation that his trap was set. Patricia was filing the annulment papers and the corporate takeover documents. Marcus had delivered Brett's classified military files. Gabriel had provided a detailed psychological profile of both targets and recommended a course of action that would systematically destroy every aspect of their lives. Derek's phone had 17 missed calls from Chloe and 12 from Brett. He ignored them all. Instead, he drove to his office building. In the lobby, he instructed security to revoke Brett Morrison's access cards immediately. Then he took the elevator to the 15th floor, where Apex Protection Services occupied the entire level. Derek's assistant, Jennifer Ross, looked up in surprise. Mr. Thornfield, I didn't expect to see you today. How was the wedding? Canceled, Derek said simply. Jennifer, I need you to call an emergency board meeting for this afternoon. All department heads, plus our major clients. And I need you to contact our military contract officer at the Pentagon. Tell him I have urgent information regarding a compromised operative. Jennifer's eyes widened, but she'd worked for Derek long enough to know not to ask questions. Derek walked into his corner office and stood at the window, looking down at the city below. Somewhere out there, Brett Morrison was probably celebrating his successful deception. Somewhere else, Chloe was probably crying and trying to figure out how to salvage her situation. They had no idea what was coming. Derek opened his desk drawer and pulled out a framed photo of him and Chloe from their engagement party. She was laughing in the picture, her head thrown back in joy, her hand displaying her engagement ring. He studied her face, looking for signs of the deception he'd missed. Then he dropped the frame into his wastebasket, glass shattering as it hit the bottom. Derek Thornfield was a patient man, but his patience had limits. Brett Morrison and Chloe Reynolds had crossed a line from which there would be no return. They wanted to play games with his life. He'd show them what real games looked like. The war was about to begin, and Derek had no intention of taking prisoners. Chapter 4. The First Strike. Monday morning arrived with gray Portland skies that matched Derek's mood perfectly. He sat in the conference room of Hawkins & Associates, watching Patricia spread documents across the mahogany table like battle plans. "The annulment papers have been filed," Patricia said, adjusting her glasses. "Based on the evidence you provided, the affair, the pregnancy, the fraudulent concealment, the judge will likely grant it within 30 days. Oregon is very clear about marriages obtained through deception." Derek nodded grimly. "What about the business? Brett Morrison violated Section 12 of your partnership agreement by using his shares as collateral without written consent. Under Oregon business law, that constitutes automatic forfeiture of his partnership stake. I filed an emergency motion to freeze his assets and force a sale of his shares back to the company at the original valuation price from 5 years ago, which is approximately $40,000. His current stake is worth about $2.8 million. Derek's smile was predatory. "Perfect. When will he be served?" "This afternoon." "But Derek, you should know. He's been calling my office all morning. He knows something is happening." Derek's phone buzzed with another call from Brett. He'd received 23 calls in the past 2 days, along with increasingly desperate voicemails. He declined the call and turned back to Patricia. "Let him panic. What about the criminal matter?" Patricia's expression grew serious. "That's more complicated. Marcus delivered the Afghanistan files, and they're damning. Brett Morrison violated the Geneva Convention and committed war crimes. However, pursuing this criminally could expose your own role in the cover-up. I'm prepared for that risk. Derek, you could face federal charges. Court-martial. Prison time." Derek leaned back in his chair, considering. What if the information were to surface through different channels? Anonymous tips to investigative journalists, for instance. Patricia understood immediately. "That would be outside the scope of legal counsel I can provide." "Of course." Moving on. "What about the personal matter?" "Chloe Reynolds has been staying at the Marriott downtown since Saturday night. My investigator confirmed she's been meeting with Brett Morrison daily, presumably trying to coordinate their response to your actions." Derek's jaw tightened. Even now, they were still together. Still scheming. "There's something else," Patricia continued. "My investigator discovered that Chloe withdrew $30,000 from her savings account this morning. She also purchased a plane ticket to San Francisco, departing Friday." "Running away?" "It appears so. But here's the interesting part. The ticket is one way, and it's in her maiden name only." Derek processed this information. Chloe was planning to disappear, probably hoping to start over somewhere else with Brett's baby. It was a smart move, but it wouldn't save her. Derek's phone rang. This time it was his office. "Mr. Thornfield?" Jennifer's voice was tense. "Brett Morrison is here. He's demanding to see you, and he's agitated." Derek glanced at his watch. 2:15 p.m. Perfect timing. Send him up to conference room B. Tell him I'll be there in 5 minutes. He ended the call and turned to Patricia. "I need you to be a witness to this conversation. Bring a recording device." "Derek, I don't think." "Patricia, in 5 minutes, Brett Morrison is going to confess to fraud, conspiracy, and probably threaten me. I need it documented." They walked to Derek's office, building in silence. In the elevator, Derek felt the familiar calm that had always preceded combat operations. His heartbeat slowed, his breathing steadied, his mind sharpened to a laser focus. Brett Morrison was pacing like a caged animal when Derek entered conference room B. At 32, Brett was still military fit, but Derek could see stress eating at him. Dark circles under his eyes, a tremor in his hands, sweat stains on his shirt despite the cool weather. "Derek, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for days. We need to talk." Derek sat down calmly, Patricia beside him with her briefcase. "I'm listening." Brett glanced nervously at Patricia. "This is private business. Ms. Hawkins is my attorney. Everything you say here is privileged." Now talk. Brett ran his hands through his hair. Look, I know you know about Chloe and me. Someone sent you something at the wedding, right? I saw you leave. Keep going. Derek, it's not what you think. She was vulnerable, confused about the engagement. I was helping her work through her feelings, and things just happened. It was a mistake. Derek's expression remained perfectly neutral. How many times did this mistake happen? What? 8 months, Brett. 8 months you've been fucking my fiancée behind my back. 8 months you've been coming to my home, eating my food, pretending to be my friend while you betrayed me. So tell me exactly how many times this mistake happened. Brett's face went pale. Derek, listen, and tell me about the baby. Is it mine or yours? The question hung in the air like a blade. Brett opened and closed his mouth several times before Derek continued. Tell me about your gambling debts. Tell me about Tony Vega. Tell me about your plan to steal my company to pay off your bookies. Brett stepped backward as if he'd been slapped. How did you? I know everything, Brett. Every text message, every secret meeting, every lie you've told me for the past 8 months. The only question now is whether you're going to keep lying or start telling the truth. Brett slumped into a chair, his facade crumbling. Derek, I'm in serious trouble. Tony Vega isn't just a bookie. He's connected to some very dangerous people. If I don't pay him back, that's not my problem anymore. Yes, it is. Brett's voice rose desperately. Don't you understand? If they kill me, they'll come after you too. You're my business partner. They'll assume you have my money. Derek smiled coldly. Actually, I'm not your business partner anymore. You violated our partnership agreement when you used your shares as collateral. As of this afternoon, you own exactly 0% of Apex Protection Services. Brett stared at him in horror. You can't do that. Already did. Check your phone. You should have received service papers about an hour ago. Brett fumbled for his phone with shaking hands. Derek watched his face crumble as he read the legal documents. This is insane. You can't just steal my company. I'm not stealing anything. You forfeited your rights when you committed fraud. The buyback price is $40,000, the original value of your stake, minus legal fees and damages, of course. Derek, please. I'm begging you. I made a mistake, but I'll make it right. Chloe means nothing to me. It was just sex. You and I are brothers. We served together. We've been through hell together. Derek stood slowly, his eyes never leaving Brett's face. You're right. We did serve together. We were brothers, which is why what you did is unforgivable. He started toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Brett, you might want to start looking for a new career. I'm sending some interesting files about your service record to a journalist friend at the Washington Post. Something about civilian casualties in Kandahar. I'm sure the Pentagon will be very interested in reopening that investigation. Brett's face went white with terror. Derek, no. You can't. If that comes out, you'll go to federal prison for war crimes. Yes, I know. But you'll go down too. You covered up. Derek turned back with a smile that would have frozen hellfire. Brett, I've been planning my exit strategy from the moment I decided to protect you. The difference between you and me is that I always think 3 moves ahead. He walked out, leaving Brett Morrison sitting alone in the conference room, staring at the ruins of his life. The first strike was complete, but Derek was just getting started. Chapter 5, Cornered Prey. Derek returned to his apartment that evening to find Chloe waiting in the lobby. She looked haggard, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her eyes red and swollen from crying. She was clutching a small overnight bag, and Derek noticed her hands were trembling. Derek, please. We need to talk. He walked past her toward the elevators without breaking stride. No, we don't. Derek, wait. She hurried after him, her heels clicking on the marble floor. I know you're angry, but let me explain. Explain what? That you've been fucking my business partner for 8 months? That you're pregnant with his child? That you plan to use our marriage to help him steal my company? Derek's voice was deadly quiet as they entered the elevator alone. Chloe's face crumpled. It's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. The elevator doors closed. I've seen every text message, Chloe. Every photo. Every detail of your little plan. There was no plan. It just happened. Derek turned to face her fully for the first time since the wedding. Tell me about Tony Vega. Chloe went pale. I don't know who that is. Try again. Tell me about Brett's gambling debts. Tell me about his plan to use your marriage to me as leverage to take over my company and pay off his bookies. Derek, I swear I didn't know. You knew enough to withdraw $30,000 from your savings account this morning. You knew enough to buy a one-way ticket to San Francisco. The elevator reached the 15th floor, Derek's penthouse. As the doors opened, Chloe grabbed his arm. Derek, please. I'm pregnant. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Derek looked down at her hand on his arm, then back to her face. Whose baby is it? I don't know. Yes, you do. The timing makes it impossible to be mine. You've been taking birth control pills the entire time we've been together. I've seen them in your purse. The only time you stopped was 8 months ago, right around the time you started fucking Brett. Chloe began crying harder. Derek, I love you. I've always loved you. What happened with Brett was just what? A mistake? You've been making the same mistake for 8 months. Derek stepped out of the elevator. Find somewhere else to go, Chloe. You're not welcome here. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have any money. You ruined Brett. He can't help me. Derek turned back to her with cold eyes. That's not my problem anymore. As the elevator doors began to close, Chloe stuck her foot out to stop them. Derek, wait. There's something else you need to know. Something in her tone made Derek pause. What? Brett. He's not just involved with gambling. He's been selling information about your clients. Derek's blood went cold. What kind of information? Security details. Client names. I don't understand all of it, but he's been meeting with someone named Vincent Kozlov. They've been paying him for details about your government contracts. Derek grabbed Chloe's arm and pulled her into his apartment, slamming the door behind them. Tell me everything. Now. Vincent Kozlov was a name Derek knew well. A Russian arms dealer who operated through a network of shell companies. If Brett had been selling classified information to foreign operatives, it wasn't just betrayal, it was treason. Start from the beginning, Derek demanded. Everything you know. Chloe sank onto his couch, still crying. About 3 months ago, Brett started having meetings with this Russian man. He told me it was just business consulting, but I heard them talking once. The Russian was asking about your Pentagon contracts, your client list, security protocols for government facilities. What did Brett tell him? I don't know exactly, but I saw Brett photographing documents from your office. He said it was just copying files for backup, but now... Derek's mind raced. If Brett had been selling classified information, it explained how he'd been able to maintain his lifestyle despite massive gambling debts. It also meant Derek's company, and possibly Derek himself, were now targets of a federal investigation. How long has this been going on? I think since before we started, before Brett and I. Chloe couldn't finish the sentence. Derek pulled out his secure phone and dialed a number. Marcus? It's Derek. I need an emergency meeting. We have a national security problem. He ended the call and turned back to Chloe. You're not going to San Francisco. What? You're coming with me. You're going to tell the FBI everything you know about Brett's activities with Kozlov. Derek, no. If I cooperate with the FBI, Brett will know I betrayed him. He'll hurt me. Brett is about to be arrested for treason. He won't be in a position to hurt anyone. Derek's secure line rang. Marcus Webb's voice was tense. Derek, we have a problem. I just got word from my Pentagon contacts. There's been a security breach involving your company. FBI counterintelligence is opening an investigation. You need to get ahead of this immediately. I know about the breach. I have a witness who can testify about Brett Morrison's activities with Vincent Kozlov. Jesus Christ. How deep does this go? I don't know yet, but I intend to find out. Can you arrange a meeting with the FBI? I'll make some calls. Derek, if Morrison has been selling classified information, anyone with access to those files could be considered suspect. That includes you. Derek looked at Chloe, who was listening with growing terror. Then we need to move fast. I want Morrison in federal custody before he has a chance to destroy evidence or disappear. Agreed. I'll have something set up within the hour. Derek ended the call and turned to Chloe. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cooperate fully with federal investigators. You're going to tell them everything you know about Brett's activities. In exchange, you'll receive immunity from prosecution. What about us? Derek's expression was stone cold. There is no us. There never was. But if you help me destroy Brett Morrison completely, I might let you disappear quietly instead of ensuring you're prosecuted as an accomplice. Chloe nodded frantically. I'll do whatever you want. Good. Because Brett Morrison is about to learn what happens when someone betrays Derek Thornfield. And this time, there won't be any mercy. Derek walked to his safe and pulled out a thick file, his insurance policy against Brett that he'd maintained since Afghanistan. But now he wouldn't just be ending Brett's career. He'd be ending his freedom permanently. Some betrayals could never be forgiven. Some enemies could never be allowed to survive. Brett Morrison was about to discover that Derek Thornfield was far more dangerous than he'd ever imagined. Chapter 6. The Net Closes. The FBI field office in downtown Portland was a fortress of glass and steel that Derek had visited many times in his professional capacity. Today, however, he wasn't here as a security consultant. He was here as a witness to treason. Special Agent Catherine Reed, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s who specialized in counterintelligence, sat across from Derek and Chloe in a sterile interview room. Between them lay stacks of documents, photographs, and digital evidence that painted a damning picture of Brett Morrison's criminal activities. Mr. Thornfield, you're certain about the timeline of these meetings between Morrison and Kozlov? Agent Reed's voice was crisp, professional. Absolutely. My company's security footage shows Morrison accessing classified files after hours on 17 separate occasions over the past 3 months. Each access corresponded with bank deposits to an offshore account registered to a shell company controlled by Kozlov's organization. Derek slid a folder across the table. Those are the financial records my investigator obtained. Morrison received over $200,000 for selling sensitive information about Pentagon's security protocols. Agent Reed studied the documents, her expression growing darker. Ms. Reynolds, you witnessed these meetings personally? Chloe nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. Brett told me they were just business consultations, but I heard them talking about military contracts, security weaknesses at government facilities. The Russian man, Kozlov, he was very specific about what information he wanted. Can you identify Kozlov from photographs? Yes. I saw him 3 times at Brett's apartment. Agent Reed made notes on her legal pad. Mr. Thornfield, I need to ask, why didn't you report these suspicions earlier? Derek's jaw tightened. Because until 3 days ago, I trusted Brett Morrison with my life. We served together in Afghanistan. He was my business partner and best friend. I couldn't believe he was capable of treason. What changed your mind? Derek glanced at Chloe, then back to Agent Reed. I discovered he was having an affair with my fiancée and planning to steal my company. When I investigated his activities more closely, I uncovered the espionage. Agent Reed leaned forward. Mr. Thornfield, I need to be clear about something. If Morrison has been selling classified information, anyone with access to those files could potentially be charged as an accomplice. That includes you. I understand. That's why I'm here voluntarily, with evidence and a witness. Nevertheless, you'll need to submit to a polygraph examination and provide a complete accounting of your activities during the relevant time period. Derek nodded grimly. Whatever you need. Agent Reed's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then stood. Excuse me for a moment. She left the room, and Derek turned to Chloe. Are you holding anything back? No, I've told him everything. Derek, what's going to happen to me? If you continue cooperating, you'll probably receive immunity. If you lie or hold back information, you'll be prosecuted as an accomplice to espionage. Chloe's face went pale. What about the baby? What about it? If Brett goes to prison, I'll be alone. Derek's expression was ice cold. You were alone the moment you decided to betray me. Agent Reed returned, her expression serious. Mr. Thornfield, we've been monitoring Morrison's communications. He's planning to leave the country tonight. Derek's hands clenched into fists. Where? Moscow, via Vancouver. We believe he's been compromised and is making a run for Russian protection. You can't let him escape. We don't intend to, but we need your help. Morrison has agreed to meet with you this evening, presumably to try to negotiate some kind of deal. We want you to wear a wire and get him to confess to the espionage charges. Derek considered this. What if he's armed? What if he suspects it's a trap? We'll have tactical teams positioned throughout the area. But Mr. Thornfield, I need to be clear. This operation carries significant risk. Morrison is desperate, and desperate people are unpredictable. I'll do it. Derek, no. Chloe grabbed his arm. Brett's been acting crazy since you destroyed his business partnership. He's been drinking heavily, making threats. What if he tries to hurt you? Derek looked down at her hand on his arm, then gently removed it. Brett Morrison stopped being a threat to me the moment I decided to destroy him. Agent Reed studied Derek's face. There's something else. Our investigation has uncovered evidence that Morrison may have been involved in war crimes during his service in Afghanistan. Civilian casualties that were covered up. Derek's expression remained neutral. What kind of evidence? Official reports that were allegedly destroyed, but copies were retained by certain parties. If these allegations are true, Morrison could face a military tribunal in addition to the espionage charges. Derek nodded slowly. I see. Mr. Thornfield, if you have any knowledge of these incidents, now would be the time to share that information. Derek was quiet for a long moment. Agent Reed, Brett Morrison murdered an entire family in Kandahar province, an elderly man, his wife, and their 3 grandchildren. He claimed they were combatants, but they were unarmed civilians. I helped cover it up to protect my unit. Agent Reed's pen stopped moving. You participated in a cover-up of war crimes. Yes, I destroyed evidence and falsified reports. I've regretted it every day since, but I thought I was protecting my men. Mr. Thornfield, you realize this admission could result in serious criminal charges against you? Derek looked directly into her eyes. Agent Reed, Brett Morrison is a traitor, a war criminal, and a murderer. If putting me in prison is the price for ensuring he faces justice, then so be it. Agent Reed stared at him for a long moment, then made a note. Your cooperation will be taken into consideration during any proceedings. She stood and gathered her files. The meeting with Morrison is scheduled for 8 p.m. at Pioneer Courthouse Square. We'll brief you on the technical details in an hour. As they prepared to leave, Derek turned to Chloe one final time. After tonight, you're going to disappear. You're going to take whatever immunity deal the FBI offers, move somewhere far away, and never contact me again. Do you understand? Chloe nodded, tears streaming down her face. Derek, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. Derek's expression softened slightly. I know you are, but sorry doesn't fix anything. He walked away without looking back, leaving Chloe alone with the wreckage of her choices. Tonight, Derek would face his former best friend for the last time. One of them would walk away from that confrontation, and Derek had no intention of letting it be Brett Morrison. Chapter 7. The Confrontation. Pioneer Courthouse Square was bustling with evening commuters when Derek arrived at 7:45 p.m. The wire taped to his chest felt alien, a constant reminder that every word spoken would be recorded for federal prosecutors. Agent Reed's voice came through his nearly invisible earpiece. Target approaching from the northeast corner. Stay calm. Let him talk, and try to get him to admit to the espionage charges. Derek spotted Brett immediately. His former partner looked haggard, almost manic, wearing dark sunglasses despite the overcast sky. He carried a duffel bag and kept glancing over his shoulder as he approached. Derek! Brett's voice was too loud, too forced. Thanks for meeting me, brother. They sat on a bench near the center of the square. Derek noted that Brett's hands were shaking slightly, and there was a telltale bulge under his jacket that suggested he was armed. You look like hell, Brett. Yeah, well, it's been a rough few days. Thanks to you. Brett's voice carried an edge of desperate anger. Derek, we need to work something out. This whole situation has gotten out of hand. Has it? You know it has. Look, I fucked up with Chloe. I admit that. But destroying my entire life over it, taking away my company's shares, that's extreme, even for you. Derek kept his expression neutral. Is that why you called this meeting? To negotiate. Brett leaned closer, lowering his voice. Derek, there are things you don't understand. I'm in serious trouble. Not just with Chloe, not just with the company. I'm talking about life and death trouble. Tell me about Vincent Kozlov. Brett's face went white. How do you know that name? I know a lot of things, Brett. I know about your gambling debts. I know about the Russian money. I know about the classified files you've been selling. Brett stood abruptly, his hand moving toward his jacket. Who told you that? Sit down, Brett. We're just talking. No, we're not just talking. You're fucking recording this, aren't you? Brett's voice rose, causing nearby pedestrians to stare. You son of a bitch, you're wearing a wire. Derek remained seated, his voice calm. Brett, you're paranoid. Sit down and let's work this out. Work what out? You've already destroyed everything. My business, my reputation, my future. You destroyed those things yourself when you decided to betray me. Brett's laugh was bitter, almost hysterical. Betray you? Derek, you have no idea what betrayal looks like. You want to know about Kozlov? You want to know why I had to sell information to the Russians? I'm listening. Brett sat back down, but his hand remained near his weapon. 2 years ago, you left me hanging in Afghanistan. You covered up what happened in Kandahar, sure, but you also left me carrying the guilt alone. You moved on, built your company, got rich, while I've been living with nightmares every single night. So, you decided to become a traitor? I decided to survive. Do you know what PTSD therapy costs? Do you know what it's like to wake up screaming about dead children every night? The gambling wasn't about money. It was about trying to feel something other than guilt. Derek's voice remained steady. That doesn't justify espionage, Brett, doesn't it? You built Apex Protection Services using contacts from our military service. You profited from the same system that covered up my war crimes. At least when I sold information to Kozlov, I was honest about what I was doing. You were selling out your own country. I was selling out a country that abandoned me. Brett's voice cracked. Derek, I killed innocent people, children, and the army just covered it up and sent me home with a pat on the back and a discharge check. Derek felt a flicker of something. Not sympathy, but understanding. Brett, I offer to help you get treatment. I offer to help you build a new life. With Chloe? Yeah, your charity came with strings attached, didn't it? What's that supposed to mean? Brett's smile was ugly. You think Chloe just happened to fall for me? You think this was some random affair? Derek's blood went cold. What are you saying? I'm saying I was recruited by Kozlov 18 months ago. I'm saying they needed access to your company, your files, your life. And I'm saying Chloe was part of the operation from the beginning. Derek's world tilted. You're lying. Am I? Ask yourself, Derek, how did you meet Chloe? At that charity gala, right? The one benefiting Eastern European refugees? The one organized by a foundation that turns out to be funded by Russian shell companies. Derek's hands clenched into fists. No, she played you perfectly. The innocent event coordinator charmed by the wealthy American security consultant. Kozlov's people had been watching you for months, studying your patterns, your weaknesses. They knew you were lonely, isolated by your work. They knew exactly what kind of woman would appeal to you. Agent Reed's voice crackled in Derek's earpiece. Keep him talking. We need more details about the operation. If that's true, Derek said slowly, then why are you telling me? Brett laughed bitterly. Because it doesn't matter anymore. In 3 hours, I'll be on a plane to Vancouver and then to Moscow. Kozlov's extraction plan is already in motion. And Chloe was always expendable. The pregnancy wasn't an accident. It was insurance. They needed something to keep you emotionally invested while I completed the intelligence gathering. Derek's vision went red. Whose baby is it? Does it matter? Could be mine, could be yours, could be some other operatives. The point was to complicate your life enough that you wouldn't notice what was really happening. Derek stood slowly, his entire body trembling with rage. Brett, you're telling me that my entire relationship with Chloe was a Russian intelligence operation? Your entire life has been a Russian intelligence operation, Derek. Your company, your contracts, your personal relationships. We've been inside your head for over a year. Derek's earpiece crackled again. Teams are moving in. Keep him calm for 30 more seconds. But Derek was beyond calm. He was beyond rational thought. In one fluid motion, he grabbed Brett by the throat and slammed him against the bench. You destroyed my life for money. Brett gasped, clawing at Derek's hands. Derek can't breathe. Good. Derek's voice was a whisper of pure hatred. I want you to understand something, Brett. When the FBI arrests you in about 10 seconds, you're going to federal prison for espionage. When the military gets done with you, you'll face execution for war crimes. And if somehow you survive all that, I will personally hunt you down and finish what I should have done in Kandahar. Brett's eyes bulged as he fought for air. Around them, FBI tactical teams emerged from the crowd, weapons drawn. Derek Thornfield released the suspect and stepped back. Derek looked into Brett's terrified eyes one last time, then released his grip. Brett collapsed to the ground, gasping and coughing. Brett Morrison, you're under arrest for espionage, conspiracy, and violations of the Espionage Act, Agent Reed announced as tactical officers surrounded them. As they cuffed Brett and read him his rights, Derek felt something cold and empty settle in his chest. His entire life had been a lie. His company, his relationships, his trust, all of it had been manipulated by foreign operatives. But as Derek watched Brett Morrison being dragged away in handcuffs, he realized something else. He wasn't the victim in this story anymore. He was about to become something much more dangerous. Chapter 8. Unraveling Truth. Derek sat in the FBI debriefing room at 2 a.m., his mind reeling from Brett's revelations. Agent Reed placed a cup of coffee in front of him, but Derek ignored it, staring at the photographs spread across the table. Surveillance images of Chloe meeting with unknown contacts, financial records showing payments from Russian shell companies, and communication intercepts that painted a picture of an elaborate intelligence operation. Mr. Thornfield, I need you to understand the scope of what we're dealing with, Agent Reed said, settling into the chair across from him. Based on Morrison's confession and our own investigation, this operation has been running for over 2 years. Derek's voice was hoarse. How much of my life was compromised? That's what we're trying to determine. Tell me about your relationship with Chloe Reynolds, every detail from the beginning. Derek closed his eyes, forcing himself to relive memories that now felt poisoned. We met at the Cascade Foundation Charity Gala 18 months ago. She was the event coordinator. I was there because my company had donated to their refugee assistance program. Did she approach you? Or did you approach her? She bumped into me at the bar, spilled wine on my jacket. Derek's hands clenched. She was so apologetic, insisted on paying for the cleaning. We started talking. Agent Reed made notes. What did you discuss? My work initially. She seemed genuinely interested in security consulting. Asked intelligent questions about protecting vulnerable populations. I was impressed by her knowledge. What kind of knowledge? Derek thought back, seeing the conversation with new eyes. She knew about specific military contracts, current events in Eastern Europe, details about refugee movements that most civilians wouldn't know. Red flags you missed because you were attracted to her. Exactly. Derek's voice carried bitter self-recrimination. She played me perfectly. Every conversation, every shared interest, every moment of apparent vulnerability, it was all calculated. Agent Reed slid another photograph across the table. Do you recognize this man? Derek studied the image, a well-dressed man in his 50s with silver hair and cold eyes. No. Should I? Dmitry Volkov, Kozlov's lieutenant. He's been in Portland for the past 6 months, coordinating the operation. Our surveillance shows him meeting regularly with both Morrison and Reynolds. Derek stared at the photograph, feeling sick. How many people were involved? At least a dozen that we know of. This wasn't a simple espionage operation. It was a comprehensive penetration of your personal and professional life. Agent Reed's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up grimly. Mr. Thornfield, we have a problem. Chloe Reynolds is missing. Derek's head snapped up. What do you mean missing? She left the safe house about an hour ago. Told the agents she was going to the bathroom and never came back. Security footage shows her leaving through a service exit. Derek stood abruptly. She's running. That's our assumption. We've issued a BOLO alert and contacted airport security, but Derek's secure phone rang. Unknown number. He showed it to Agent Reed, who nodded and activated recording equipment. Derek Thornfield. Hello, Derek. Chloe's voice was different, colder, more controlled. The vulnerable act was gone completely. Chloe, where are you? Somewhere safe. I wanted to call and thank you. Thank me? For destroying Brett Morrison so thoroughly. He was becoming a liability, and you solved that problem for us. Derek felt his world shift again. Us? Chloe laughed, and the sound was like ice. Did you really think Brett was the mastermind? He's a broken soldier with gambling debts and PTSD. Useful, but hardly strategic material. You're the real operative. Very good. It only took you 18 months to figure that out. Agent Reed was frantically signaling to technicians, try to trace the call. Derek kept Chloe talking. How long have you been working for the Russians? Since I was 16. Moscow University, then SVR training. I've been Chloe Reynolds for 3 years, long enough to build a complete identity. And Brett, a convenient patsy. We recruited him 2 years ago when his gambling debts made him desperate. But he was never more than a foot soldier. Derek's voice was deadly quiet. What about the baby? What baby, Derek? I'm not pregnant. I never was. Brett thought I was because I told him so. You thought I might be because I let you think so. It was just another layer of manipulation. Derek closed his eyes, feeling the full weight of his deception. The positive pregnancy test, easily faked. The morning sickness, acting. The doctor's appointments, meeting with my handlers. Why are you telling me this? Because my mission is complete, and I wanted you to understand exactly how thoroughly you've been played. For 18 months, I've had access to your home, your office, your most classified files. I've photographed every document, recorded every conversation, mapped every security protocol. Agent Reed passed Derek a note. Keep her talking. We're close to a trace. What was the endgame? Derek asked. Your company was just the beginning. Through Apex Protection Services, we've identified weaknesses in dozens of government facilities. Your client list reads like a directory of American intelligence assets. We've been inside the Pentagon, the CIA, the NSA, all through contracts you provided. Derek felt sick. How many people are going to die because of the information you stole? That's not really my concern. I'm just a data collector. You're a traitor. I'm a patriot, just not to your country. The line went quiet for a moment. Then Chloe continued. Derek, I want you to know that I did enjoy parts of our relationship. You're a good man, and under different circumstances, I might have actually fallen for you. But you didn't. No, I didn't. Goodbye, Derek. The line went dead. Agent Reed looked up from her equipment. We traced the call to a cell tower near the airport, but she's probably already gone. Derek slumped back in his chair, the full magnitude of his situation finally sinking in. She's right. I've been completely played. My company, my security clearances, my entire life, it's all compromised. Mr. Thornfield, we're going to need you to provide a complete inventory of every file, every client, every piece of classified information that might have been exposed. Derek nodded numbly. It's everything. She had access to everything. Agent Reed's expression was sympathetic but professional. There's something else. Based on what we've learned, the Justice Department is likely to bring charges against you for compromising national security. What kind of charges? Negligent handling of classified information. Failure to report suspected espionage. Possibly treason, if they can prove you knowingly assisted the operation. Derek looked up at her with hollow eyes. I didn't know. I believe you. But ignorance isn't a defense in espionage cases. Derek stood and walked to the window, looking out at the Portland skyline. In one night, he'd lost everything. His company, his reputation, his freedom, his faith in his own judgment. But as he stared into the darkness, Derek felt something else stirring. Not despair, but cold, focused rage. Chloe Reynolds and her handlers thought they'd won. They thought Derek Thornfield was finished. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Chapter 9. Final Justice. 3 months later, Derek sat in a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., waiting for his sentencing hearing. The government had offered him a plea deal, 5 years in federal prison in exchange for his cooperation in identifying compromised assets and rebuilding security protocols. His lawyer, Patricia Hawkins, had advised him to take it. Derek had other plans. All rise for the Honorable Judge Elizabeth Warren, the bailiff announced. Judge Warren, a stern woman in her 60s, took her seat and reviewed the case file. Mr. Thornfield, you've pleaded guilty to negligent handling of classified information and failure to report suspected espionage. Before I impose sentence, do you have anything to say? Derek stood slowly. Your Honor, I do. Proceed. 3 months ago, I thought I was the victim of a Russian intelligence operation. I believed I had been deceived, manipulated, and betrayed by people I trusted. I was wrong. Murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Agent Reed, sitting in the gallery, looked confused. I wasn't the victim, Your Honor. I was the bait. Derek reached into his jacket and withdrew a thick manila envelope. Your Honor, I'd like to present evidence that this entire operation was a counterintelligence mission authorized by the Department of Defense. The prosecutor shot to his feet. Objection. This is the first we've heard of any. Overruled, Judge Warren said, her eyes fixed on Derek. Mr. Thornfield approached the bench. Derek walked forward and handed the envelope to the judge. Inside were classified documents bearing DoD seals, authorization codes, and a signature of General Michael Harrison, Derek's former commanding officer. Judge Warren studied the papers for several minutes, her expression growing more serious. Mr. Thornfield, these documents appear to authorize you to conduct a false flag operation against Russian intelligence assets. Is that correct? Yes, Your Honor. 18 months ago, military intelligence identified Vincent Kozlov's organization as a significant threat to national security. They needed a way to identify and neutralize his entire network. Derek turned to face the courtroom. The military couldn't conduct the operation directly because Kozlov's people were too sophisticated. They needed someone with legitimate access to classified information, someone who could be convincingly compromised. Agent Reed was staring at Derek in shock. That's impossible. We monitored everything. You monitored what I wanted you to monitor, Derek said calmly. Every document Chloe Reynolds photographed, every file she accessed, every piece of intelligence she stole. It was all carefully prepared disinformation. Derek walked back to the defendant's table and opened his briefcase, withdrawing a laptop computer. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I'd like to demonstrate something. Judge Warren nodded, and Derek opened the laptop. The screen showed a real-time satellite feed of a compound in Eastern Europe. This is a facility outside Moscow where Kozlov's organization has been analyzing the intelligence they believe they stole from my company. What they don't know is that every piece of information was designed to lead them into a trap. On the screen, military vehicles were surrounding the compound. Derek checked his watch. In approximately 30 seconds, a joint U.S.-NATO task force will capture Vincent Kozlov, Dmitry Volkov, and 43 other members of their espionage network. The courtroom was dead silent as they watched the operation unfold on screen. Explosions lit up the facility as special forces breached the perimeter. Derek turned back to Judge Warren. The documents they've been acting on for the past year contained false information about military installations, fake security protocols, and invented intelligence assets. Every move they've made based on stolen intelligence has been predicted and monitored. What about Brett Morrison? Agent Reed demanded. What about his confession? Derek's smile was cold. Brett Morrison is exactly what he appeared to be, a traitor motivated by gambling debts and psychological instability. His recruitment by Kozlov's people was genuine, which made him the perfect entry point for our operation. And Chloe Reynolds? Major Elena Volkov, SVR-trained operative and Dmitry Volkov's daughter. She's currently in federal custody at an undisclosed location, where she's been for the past 3 months. Agent Reed stood up, her face flushed with anger. Then who the hell made that phone call from the airport? Derek's expression didn't change. I did. Voice modulation technology. I needed you to believe she had escaped, so you wouldn't question why the investigation was being transferred to military jurisdiction. Judge Warren leaned forward. Mr. Thornfield, if these documents are authentic, why wasn't this court informed of the classified nature of your activities? Because the operation required absolute authenticity, Your Honor. Everyone, the FBI, the prosecutors, my own lawyer, had to believe I was genuinely compromised. Any hint that this was a counterintelligence operation would have compromised the mission. Derek gestured to the laptop screen, where the satellite feed showed Russian operatives being led away in handcuffs. As of this moment, we've dismantled the largest Russian espionage network operating in North America. We've identified over 200 intelligence assets, captured classified weapons technology, and intercepted communications that prevented 3 separate terrorist attacks. The prosecutor was frantically whispering with FBI agents. Patricia Hawkins looked stunned. Judge Warren studied the DoD documents again, then looked up at Derek. Mr. Thornfield, these authorizations appear genuine, but I'll need verification from the Pentagon before I can proceed. Of course, Your Honor. Derek's secure phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then showed the screen to the judge. That's General Harrison. He's waiting outside to provide testimony if needed. Judge Warren called a recess, and Derek was escorted to a holding room where General Harrison was waiting. A distinguished man in his 50s wearing dress blues decorated with commendations from 3 decades of service. Son, the general said, clasping Derek's hand. Outstanding work. The intelligence we gathered from this operation will protect American lives for years to come. What about Brett Morrison? Morrison will serve his time. His crimes were real, even if they serve our purposes. Some betrayals can't be forgiven, even when they're useful. Derek nodded. And Elena Volkov? She'll be exchanged for American assets, currently held in Russia. Standard prisoner swap. Derek was quiet for a moment. General, what happens now? Now, you disappear. New identity, new life, substantial compensation for your service. The official record will show that Derek Thornfield died in federal custody. And unofficially, General Harrison smiled. Unofficially, you'll be available for consultation on similar operations. There are other networks, other threats that require your particular talents. An hour later, Judge Warren returned to the bench. After consulting with Pentagon officials and reviewing classified documentation, she dismissed all charges against Derek Thornfield. As Derek walked out of the courthouse, he thought about the past 18 months. Brett Morrison and Elena Volkov had both tried to destroy his life through betrayal and deception. In the end, they had given him something far more valuable, the chance to serve his country in a way most people never could. Derek Thornfield had learned to be patient, to think strategically, to turn his enemies' weapons against them. He had learned that the greatest revenge wasn't destruction. It was making your enemies serve your purposes without them ever knowing it. In 6 hours, Derek Thornfield would officially cease to exist. Tomorrow, someone else would begin a new mission in a new place against new enemies who thought they were clever enough to destroy American security. They would learn, as Brett Morrison and Elena Volkov had learned, that some men couldn't be broken. Some betrayals couldn't be allowed to stand. And some victories were worth waiting 18 months to achieve. Derek walked into the Washington, D.C. sunset, disappearing into a crowd of strangers who would never know that they owed their safety to a man who had mastered the art of turning betrayal into justice.